In the last episode, our MC boldly assured the members that listening to the workshop with him will also be helpful for them. Now, upon hearing his assured statement, Seon is taken aback. She remembers how everyone in the film and theater department had constantly talked about him throughout the previous semester. This led her to believe that Shin was someone who valued talent and wasn't shy about flaunting it. However, his current behavior contrasts sharply with her expectations, leaving her confused. Seon understands that effort builds over time, and that time, in turn, builds a reputation, a lesson she learned from observing Seo Ryu during her childhood acting days. Despite his talent, Seo Ryu was always the first to arrive for practice and the last to leave the set. He was a more serious performer than anyone else, just like a Sigma on his grind set. Seon learns from people like Seo Ryu, having started as a child actor herself. She tried harder, believing there is no such thing as a genius who appears without effort. Now, she feels baffled that someone from a completely different major is experiencing acting for the first time and still doing this well in acting. She wonders why everyone makes such a fuss about Shin and decides to not acknowledge him no matter what. The scene shifts to the acting professor, Lee Sun-ha, addressing the students. She introduces herself as Lee Sun-ha from the theater group Comet and mentions it has been 3 years since she last stood in this place. She informs that during that time, she regrets not being able to meet her juniors due to performances. The students respond enthusiastically, expressing their mutual desire to see her. Suddenly, she notices Shin sitting a bit apart from other students. Observing his presence, she wonders if he is the student that actor Hansung and Professor Yeopil recommended. The teacher begins by referencing the pre-announcement, stating that today's workshop theme is listening. She emphasizes that the lines should be delivered smoothly and then provides an example dialogue. One by one, the students do as the teacher tells them. The activity involves a demo conversation where Mrs. Lee Sun-ha would read lines and students are supposed to respond with lines B. As Mrs. Lee Sun-ha slowly guides the students through the activity, they start to memorize their roles in a rote manner, reciting their parts without genuinely paying attention to her questions. Consequently, even if Mrs. Lee Sun-ha changes her script, the students would still respond with their rehearsed lines, eventually realizing that they answered without actually listening to what she said. You had only one task, students. Mrs. Lee explains to the students that this is why, when actors become too familiar with their lines, they might start to respond mechanically without truly paying attention to the dialogue of other characters. In extreme cases, some actors may even anticipate their next line while the other person is still speaking, rather than genuinely listening. Pointing this out to the students who made the mistake, she explains that this undesirable habit of responding mechanically is known as the gray zone. In the gray zone, both an actor's actions and the other actor's reactions are so rigidly scripted that the exchange becomes predictable. The main issue with the gray zone is that acting within it lacks vitality and spontaneity. She emphasizes that skilled actors understand the importance of truly listening. Mrs. Lee eloquently elaborates that even with pre-written lines, if you listen intently to the other person's words and deliver your lines sincerely, it creates a dynamic and engaging dramatic tension. The narrative reveals that, while it may seem that acting is primarily about portraying a role convincingly, the deeper essence of the craft lies in the art of listening. Lee Sun-ha's ability to secure a prominent position in the main lineup of Comet for an extended period was largely due to her reputation for being an exceptional listener. This skill set her apart and contributed significantly to her enduring success. The teacher then introduces the next activity, the counter-argument workshop, designed to further teach the students about the importance of listening. She invites a student in a black t-shirt to participate first. She begins by asking him if they are friends. The student replies that they are not, clarifying that she is his senior. Mrs. Lee then asks him where he is from, to which he promptly responds. Mrs. Lee points out that he has failed the exercise. She explains that instead of answering directly, he should have questioned why she was interested in his hometown or stated that he doesn't have a hometown, among other possible counterarguments. Next, she calls upon Seon, who performs exceptionally well in responding to her questions. Finally, it is the turn of our MC. She starts by asking for his name. Shin responds with a clever counterargument, asking if he really needs to reveal it to her. The teacher quickly realizes that Shin is not just completing the task, he is showcasing his acting skills. As the questioning continues, it becomes evident that, unlike the other students, Shin has already developed a character for this exercise while strictly following the counter-argument format. He embodies the role of a butterfly that grew stronger in darkness. When Mrs. Lee tells him he appears powerless and vulnerable, he counters by explaining that power isn't about violence and that his power lies in his ability to fly. His performance, blending creativity and adherence to the task, impresses both the students and Mrs. Lee. After the workshop conducted by teacher Lee Sun-ha concluded, a 2-week-long acting workshop continued. This workshop lasted 6 hours each day, with each instructor teaching for 1 to 3 days. The remaining duration included various assignments. There was an individual assignment focused on character development, a body workshop to improve physical balance, and a 2-person composition exercise aimed at drawing out natural emotions through empathy. Additionally, a 4-person composition required collaboration to elevate images and maximize creativity. I don't know why, but suddenly I don't feel like becoming an actor anymore. Anyways, as they engaged in these various assignments together, the Oedipus members began to see Shin in a new light. In turn, Shin's perception of the Oedipus group also changed. Unlike at Changchun, the environment at Oedipus is much more open and modern, allowing for the free exchange of opinions between seniors and juniors. Many actors are willing to seek help without hesitation and readily offer assistance to others. Above all, they are genuinely hardworking individuals. Despite their busy schedules, the seniors at Oedipus have a deep commitment to the workshop. Shin now understands why Seo Rushin hoped he would come to appreciate the unique appeal of Oedipus. However, one thing remains unchanged: Seon's behavior towards Shin. Despite this, Shin recognizes that although she is still cold towards him, her overall image within Oedipus has evolved significantly. Seon Yuri, who leads the workshop, consistently demonstrates her dedication by being the first to arrive and the last to leave. She diligently performs her duties and rarely seeks help from others. She prefers to handle her responsibilities personally whenever possible. Although Seon lacks cunning strategies and may not be particularly eloquent, her relentless efforts are hard to overlook. Her unwavering commitment and hard work have earned her a great deal of respect from those around her. Shin enters the practice room where Seon is tidying up. Once she finishes cleaning, Seon starts focusing on her vocal exercises. As Shin observes her choral singing practice aimed at refining her dialogue delivery, he proposes that she incorporate falsetto occasionally, suggesting it could enhance the effectiveness of her line delivery. Man, he said that she has a bad voice without saying that she has a bad voice. Seon, however, becomes frustrated and reacts sharply to Shin's suggestion. She accuses him of oversimplifying everything and making it appear as though solving her vocal challenges is effortless. In a flashback, Seon is seen discussing her vocalization issue with a recruiter from an acting company. She confides in him that her voice doesn't project well enough to reach the audience during plays, which led to her being sidelined from the lead role in the Oedipus Autumn performance. She explains that she has been diligently practicing choral singing to improve, but it's not yielding the desired results. The recruiter tries to reassure her, stating that there's no need to worry because in film and television, sound is recorded separately, and stage plays are a minor genre. He attempts to persuade her to leave the theater club after graduation and join their company. However, Seon understands the distinction between being unable to do something and choosing not to do it. She doesn't want to be an actor who only works in movies and dramas due to difficulties with stage vocalization. Later, she refused to set limits for herself and avoided giving up without making a genuine effort. Determined, she practiced tirelessly until she could improve. She believed that the foundation of stage vocalization lay in choral singing. After a prolonged period of practice, she managed to incorporate choral singing into her routine. However, when she attempted to speak using the choral singing technique, her voice became strained, making it harder to deliver her lines effectively compared to when she simply spoke. This struggle led her to question whether she was truly suited to be an actor for the stage. In the present, this vocalization issue has become a matter of ego for Seon as an actor. Therefore, when Shin easily suggests a solution, she becomes angry, believing he knows nothing about her struggles and how hard she has worked. She angrily asks him if simply applying easy answers while practicing solves his issues, adding that a genius like him must have an easy life. Shin falls silent for a moment before responding that no one truly knows what goes on in someone else's mind and that, in reality, there is neither a monologue nor a dialogue. With that, he leaves the practice hall. After Shin leaves, Seon reflects on their interaction. Despite their distant relationship, she feels irritated by Shin's presumption that he understands everything after just observing a few practice sessions. She considers his advice irrelevant and persists in her choral singing practice. However, Shin's words about the absence of both monologue and dialogue continue to resonate in her thoughts. She reflects on her childhood when she landed the role of Hisu in the drama Paradise Diary. During that time, other competing actors would gossip about her, claiming she got the role solely because of her cuteness and attributing her success to her looks. However, Seon knew how much hard work she had put in as a child actor to earn that role. Even when she was admitted to her current university, people gossiped about her, saying that the university had high admission standards and it was not acceptable to admit someone like Seon Yuri, who they believed relied only on her appearance despite the fact that she also passed the college entrance exam with the same scores, causing her extremely agitated on the mindset of people around her about her. She realizes that if there truly were such things as monologues and dialogues in reality, misunderstandings wouldn't exist. This insight leads her to agree with what Shin said. She feels ashamed for making assumptions about Shin, just as others had made assumptions about her. Because Shin is a rookie actor, she had quickly concluded that his practice time couldn't possibly compare to hers, without knowing his actual circumstances. Deciding to give Shin's suggestion a try, she practices using falsetto to improve her vocalization. To her surprise, this technique greatly enhances her speech and tone, making them clearer and more steady. Will she see a change in her behavior towards Shin? We will see. The next day arrives, marking the final day of the workshop. Today's guest teacher is the renowned actor Han-sung, the one who had recommended Shin for the workshop. Everyone anticipates his lesson eagerly, curious about the stories he might share, and the wisdom he will impart. Finally, the door swings open, and Mr. Han-sung enters the practice hall with a warm, radiant smile that lights up the room. The sight of him fills everyone with excitement. Taking his seat, Mr. Han-sung announces that today's session will focus on emotional engagement, a subject that immediately captures everyone's attention. One of the students suddenly calls Han-sung by the nickname Bizit, a moniker he earned for his acting skills. However, Han-sung admits that he doesn't particularly like this nickname, as it suggests he is only capable of performing in tragic roles. Despite his reservations, he acknowledges that he is well known for his portrayal of sorrowful characters. He attributes this to the sincerity of emotions in his performances. Han-sung proceeds to educate the students on the profound perception of audiences. He explains that viewers are highly perceptive and can quickly discern whether emotions portrayed on stage or screen are genuine or not, regardless of the awareness that it is a performance. He stresses that an actor's personal experiences play a crucial role in their capacity to convey authentic emotions, which is what truly captivates and engages the audience. Why is this man was so philosophical? I mean chill dude. Anyways, Han-sung then opens up with a personal anecdote to drive home his point. He reminds the students that, as they may already know, he experienced profound poverty during his youth, enduring a long period of hardship and perseverance. He shares that the loss of his beloved daughter added another layer of struggle to his life, intensifying the challenges he faced on his journey to becoming a successful actor. However, he emphasizes that these experiences enriched his emotional depth, particularly enhancing his understanding and portrayal of emotions like despair. In the next part of the workshop, Han-sung guides the students through a practice designed to help them expand the range and depth of their emotions. He introduces them to a technique known as emotional maximization, which involves deeply immersing themselves in their emotions to enhance their ability to convey genuine feelings in their performances. Before beginning the exercise, Han-sung makes two important requests. He explains that delving deeply into negative emotions can sometimes lead to violent outbursts or self-harm. Therefore, he asks the students to remember their own value and to avoid any form of violence, regardless of the intensity of the emotions they experience. In addition, Han-sung requests that any stories or personal experiences shared during the workshop remain confidential and be kept buried in hearts once the session concludes. This stipulation aims to create a safe and trusting environment for all participants. The students unanimously agree to these conditions, understanding the importance of respecting each other's vulnerability. Han-sung then asks for volunteers to participate in the exercise. Among the students, only Shin raises his hand to volunteer. Shin stands up and takes a seat on the mat in front of Han-sung. The teacher initiates the exercise by asking Shin to recall the most intense emotion he has ever experienced, clarifying that it can be either joy or sorrow. To Hansong's surprise, Shin chooses joy, an emotion that is not typically selected in such exercises. Intrigued, Hansong asks Shin to elaborate on when he felt this profound sense of joy. Shin starts to share his personal story. When his parents divorced, he faced a difficult decision, choosing to live with his mother. He reveals that his father had always seemed indifferent towards their family. It was only as Shin matured that he discovered there had been another woman in his father's life. Will it be fine if I call Shin's dad a player? The atmosphere at home was always tense whenever his dad came back, and Shin often hoped his dad wouldn't return. However, during the divorce, his dad insisted on taking one of the children with him. Shin still couldn't understand his father's motives, whether it was a desire to pass on his inheritance or simply a matter of not wanting to lose his share. His dad presented the choice to his mom in a seemingly generous manner, as if he was being fair, though it felt more like selling a puppy and choosing the prettier one. Shin had always been fond of his younger brother, but at that moment, he desperately wanted his mom to choose him. Hansong asks Shin if he remembers how he felt when his mom nominated him to be her guardian. Shin replies that although it felt like a burden, he was happy. He recalls looking at his younger brother with a bit of pride. Despite being young, Shin acknowledges his selfishness and says it makes him nauseous to think back to that time. Hansong inquires about what his brother looked like. His question makes Shin tremble in discomfort and gloom. Hansong encourages him not to suppress his feelings but to bring them up slowly. He asks Shin to recall and verbalize the expressions of his father, mother, and younger brother, and how he feels when he thinks about them. Seeing Shin getting uncomfortable on asking these questions, the teacher realizes what he felt wasn't joy, and he mocks himself for feeling happy for that time. Shin ends up crying, completely lost in the despair of his past, unable to give any answers to the teacher. After Shin's turn, Hansong addresses the students, noting that everyone seems to have gotten involved and invested in the exercise. He acknowledges that some participants may have found it difficult to express certain emotions. So, he then begins to share his own story about his daughter. He recalls the moment she was born and her first cry, describing it as his greatest joy. Hansong tells the students that his daughter, Boan, his one and only, brings him to tears whenever he thinks of her now. He reminisces about the first time she clearly said, "Dad, come home." He was so moved by her clear pronunciation that he smiled and patted her head. Whenever he would leave the house, he started crying as if he had lost everything. Now, every time he comes home to an empty house and realizes her absence, he feels immense pain. He recalls her whispering in his ear, "Don't cry, Dad, I'm here." The memory of her delicate little hand holding his finger makes him cry. And not just him, his story leaves everyone emotional. Shin comes to realize that Hansong has faced numerous challenges in his life, which have given him a deep capacity to empathize with the emotions of young actors like himself. This understanding leads Shin to view Hansong as a compassionate and wise mentor. As other students also share their stories during the workshop, the session progresses, each narrative eventually reaching its conclusion. After all the stories have been shared, Hansong thanks everyone for their openness and participation. He takes a seat and directs his attention to Shin. Hansong mentions that Professor Yeeple had shown him a video of Shin's acting in class, which prompted him to recommend Shin for the workshop. Hansong praises Shin's talent and expresses a keen interest in watching him perform a full-length monodrama. Hansong asks Shin if he has time to perform a 90-minute monodrama, either from his own script or one that Hansong will provide. Shin contemplates whether he can manage this, and then tells Hansong that it's possible if he is given some time, as he already has a script for a monodrama. He asks Hansong if he can use some equipment for the play, and Hansong grants him permission. Shin enlists the help of some technicians and begins preparing for the performance. Meanwhile, Seon and other students express their doubts about Shin's ability to sustain a 90-minute performance. They point out that even performing a 10-minute monodrama is extremely exhausting. Even for the audience, it can be tiring to sit and watch a 90-minute long play. Shin proceeds to start his play by turning off the lights. Hansong asks him for the title of his play, and Shin responds, "Survivalist." The play begins, and Shin delivers an impressive performance as always. He portrays the role of a victim, pleading with the judge to impose the maximum sentence on his father's killer. The use of lighting and the portrayal of tension in the scene captivate Hansong from the start. The audience becomes engrossed in the narrative, seeing the character Shin plays as someone who views the murderer as a devil. However, as the performance progresses, Shin's acting reveals the hidden complexities of the character he is playing. A young man who has been abused by his father since childhood and has grown up bearing emotional scars. Suddenly, the audience witnesses a shift in the scene. Shin transitions from portraying the victim to adopting the character of the culprit. In a dramatic and cunning manner, he reveals through his performance that the victim and the culprit are the same person. The young boy murdered his own father. In the play, Shin delivers a compelling performance as a troubled child who ultimately kills his abusive father, leaving the audience both stunned and engrossed. As the drama unfolds, the boy is found guilty of the murder. However, in a poignant moment, he unleashes his deep-seated anger and recounts the intense physical and emotional abuse inflicted by his father. He admits to meticulously planning the crime, revealing the extent of his desperation and turmoil. The play concludes with a collective exhale from the audience, impressed by Shin's powerful portrayal. Hansung, recognizing Shin's talent despite his relative inexperience, praises him for his acting prowess. The entire group, including Seon, joins in applauding Shin's remarkable monodrama. However, Mr. Hansung does have one critique about Shin's performance. He mentions that when Professor Yeopil showed him the recording of the one-act play, he found it flawless. Yet, as he had anticipated, seeing it performed as a full act brought out some differences. Despite the one-act play being perfect, the extended performance revealed subtle variations in Shin's acting that were more noticeable in the full act. The professor offers Shin some valuable advice, suggesting that he doesn't need to try so hard. He assures Shin that he possesses a natural presence on stage, capable of capturing the audience's attention effortlessly. I am still waiting for the criticism. Never mind. Shin takes this advice to heart and expresses his gratitude. The following evening, the members of the Oedipus Club gather at a bar to celebrate the successful conclusion of the Oedipus Summer Workshop. The atmosphere is lively, with everyone enjoying themselves. Amidst the festivities, Mr. Hansung takes a moment to talk to Shin over a drink. He inquires whether Shin's intense performance in the monodrama the previous day was influenced by his personal family experiences. Shin admits that it's difficult for him to answer that question definitively, but reassures Mr. Hansung that his family is now living in harmony. Taking a moment to reflect, Shin shares his perspective on the relationship between experience and emotional expression with Mr. Hansung. He expresses his belief that the depth of one's emotions isn't necessarily determined by their experiences. Hansung continues to drink his beer in silence, yet inwardly, he acknowledges the truth in Shin's words, especially given the power of Shin's performance the previous day. Despite being only 23 years old, Shin was able to convey profound and sincere emotions in his portrayal, something Hansung believes typically requires having navigated significant life challenges and emotional upheavals. Shin further explains that when he immerses himself in a role, he truly feels the character's emotions, not through his personal experiences, but through a deep sense of empathy, imagining how he would feel if he were in the character's situation. He confesses to Mr. Hansung that he didn't particularly enjoy the emotional maximization workshop. In that workshop, actors are required to confront their true feelings, which, while it may evoke genuine emotions, can also be risky as it forces them to delve into their own traumas. Shin believes that this approach can be dangerous. Even though this method of using empathy to portray a character is a classic technique, Hansung acknowledges Shin's approach of embodying the character by analyzing how the character would act or feel in a particular situation. Hansung contemplates that he was also planning to explore this method in his own acting practice. Hansung reflects on the nature of expressing emotions, particularly in tragedy, noting that because the emotional foundation is predetermined, characters often end up being portrayed in similar ways. Despite this, his acting has garnered a positive response from audiences, leading to numerous invitations to perform. However, he feels his growth as an actor is reaching its limits. He wonders if his struggle to convey happiness in his performances is due to his own lack of experiencing happiness, questioning whether the method of representation itself might be flawed. As he converses with Shin, he feels like he's speaking with a fellow actor who has deeply pondered the art of acting for a long time. Hansung thanks Shin for this enlightening exchange and acknowledges that he, too, has more work to do in refining his craft. After a conversation with Hansung over a few drinks, Shin starts feeling a bit tipsy and heads towards the bathroom. Suddenly, Seon intercepts him and apologizes sincerely to Shin, acknowledging her previous rudeness. Is it a prerequisite to be high for the self-realization to kick in? She explains that she felt uncomfortable because she perceived Shin as someone who talks to others without truly getting to know them first. Shin listens attentively to Seon's apology and then asks her if the workshop was beneficial for her. Seon responds positively, expressing that she found the workshop very helpful, especially highlighting the impressive assignment from the first day and Shin's compelling play from the recent performance. She admits that she learned a lot from observing him. As their conversation takes on a cozy atmosphere, both Shin and Seon start feeling a bit bashful. Seon takes a bold step and asks Shin if he harbors any resentment towards her for her behavior during the workshop. Contrary to her concerns, Shin reassures her that he doesn't harbor any negative feelings towards her. In fact, he reveals that he was a fan of her show Paradise Diary. This revelation leads to a shared moment of happiness between them. The next day, Shin meets with his family. On the way to the beach, Shin's mom asks if he is uncomfortable in his seat and if he would like some water. Shin responds affirmatively. She then suggests turning the rear air conditioner higher if it's hot, to which Shin again agrees. She inquires if his sister has arrived safely, and Shin confirms, noting that she just got off the train and that his brother has also arrived. Shin's mom comments on how, despite being a senior, his brother doesn't come home during vacations. Shin's dad explains that such dedication is necessary to pass the recruitment exam, but acknowledges that they are still spending their summer vacation together. During the remaining vacation after the workshop, Shin goes on a 3-day family trip. This trip holds special significance as it is his first trip with his family since traveling back in time, and it is even more special because Shin has something important to tell them. In his past life, when Shin announced to his family that he wants to become an actor, they didn't support him. Shin's mom questioned if he really needs to pursue that path. His sister had also requested that he reconsider his decision, describing it as somewhat hasty. In response, Shin clarified that his choice wasn't abrupt and that he had been involved in acting for a considerable period. Eventually, his father chimed in with his own perspective. He expressed doubts about Shin's capacity to captivate the public, pointing out that some people naturally stood out even without effort. Shin countered, asserting that his father wouldn't be able to understand his ambitions. The atmosphere grew tense as Shin's father adopted a colder tone, suggesting that if Shin didn't mind remaining an obscure actor, he could pursue whatever path he desired. The situation quickly escalated, culminating in a heated argument between father and son. Shin passionately contended that, as his parents, they ought to support his aspirations. However, his father remained convinced that there was no viable future for Shin in the acting world and feared that Shin was destined for failure, a scenario he was desperate to prevent. This conviction drove him to try to dissuade Shin from continuing down the path of an actor. From that day onward, Shin became independent at home. His family worried about him, though he didn't understand that this concern was a form of love. As a result, the family never grew closer. Instead, they drifted apart, sharing only awkward meals once or twice a year during holidays. Upon returning, Shin realized how much he had lost. Before declaring himself an actor, he was simply another member of the family. It wasn't just him who experienced loss. His actions caused the entire family to lose their sense of home. This time, he knows he needs to persuade them calmly. Take it slow, baby, that's the mantra. Our MC believes this is a rare chance that won't come around again. Even if his parents oppose it, he is determined to demonstrate its value through his achievements, one step at a time. They finally reach the beach. Miho looks at the sea and feels happy, telling Shin that he loves the sea. Finally, Shin's sister Jiyeon arrives, reuniting with their parents and happily greeting her brother. This reunion is special for Shin, as it is the first time he has seen Jiyeon since his discharge from the military. He feels a sense of joy at seeing his sister again. However, Jiyeon has difficulty recognizing Shin because he has changed and matured significantly during his military service. She wonders if he is truly the same person she remembers. We learn that Jiyeon is Shin's twin sister. She expresses her curiosity to Shin, asking if he has experienced any major upheavals in his life that could explain his transformation. Shin responds with a smile, acting modest that he hasn't changed that much. Meanwhile, Miho, observing the siblings, reflects on a long-standing curiosity. She has always wondered why Shin seemed to have such low vitality. After seeing Jiyeon, Miho realizes that all the vitality that should have been Shin's appears to have been inherited by Jiyeon instead. This leaves Shin puzzled. Miho goes on to explain that as twins, the vitality they were endowed with is twice that of an ordinary person. However, in their case, it seems that all of this energy was transferred to Jiyeon, leaving Shin with less. Miho believes that ironically, Shin survived because he had a younger sister. Having someone with similar vitality beside him would have compensated for his own lack of vitality. Although Miho doesn't understand how Shin managed to survive after being separated from his sister, the important part is that he did. Shin is deeply surprised by this revelation. His mother had told him that when he was very young, he would cry whenever he was even briefly separated from Jiyeon. reflecting on a past incident. When Jiyeon used to save him from the bullies and those who used to ignore him, he remembers that Jiyeon had never shown annoyance towards him. Shin believes that these factors are what saved his life. On the other hand, my siblings just want to kill me so that they can have my share of snacks all for themselves. He feels overjoyed and compliments Jiyeon on how much prettier she's become since he last saw her. Jiyeon, feeling shy, teases him by asking if he's lost his mind. She then notices his new outfit and turns to their mother, inquiring if she gave him a generous allowance and playfully demanding new clothes for herself as well. Later, during their meal, Shin's father questions him about his aspirations. Once again, Shin confidently states his desire to become an actor. This declaration worries the family, particularly Jiyeon, who starts to wonder if he is really her brother or an alien impersonating him. Shin shares with his family all the plays he participated in during the last semester, as well as the workshop he recently attended. He assures them that he is not merely goofing off but is genuinely committed to pursuing this path. He acknowledges that he still has a long way to go, but he tries to boost their confidence by mentioning the praise he received from Hansung, a well-known figure who recognized his talent. Jiyeon is astonished to hear that Shin was complimented by the famous Hansung. Understanding their concern, Shin empathizes with his family, realizing that they are worried because he has chosen an uncertain career. However, he emphasizes that this is the path that brings him happiness. To his surprise, unlike in the past life, his father smiles and expresses his happiness at seeing Shin so passionate and full of life. His father tells him that he doesn't want to stand in the way of something Shin truly wants to pursue, although he still harbors some concern, given that Shin has always been rather inconspicuous since childhood. Shin flinches momentarily before inviting his family to watch his performance at school that fall. He assures them that if they still object after seeing him perform, he will reconsider his decision. After spending the vacation with his family, Shin returns to his university. Unlike at the beginning of the semester, Shin is now quite well known. Everyone is talking about his acting skills and his participation in the prestigious Oedipus workshop. He takes his seat and chats with his friends about his vacation and the script he wrote. Suddenly, he notices that Seon is absent from class. A friend informs him that she took a leave of absence to direct the fall performance. Shin is surprised by this news, but he is even more bewildered when he spots a green-haired man named Woo Junyoung in his class. Woo glances at Shin but quickly averts his gaze when Shin catches his eye. Shin greets him warmly, and they catch up over coffee during their lunch break. Shin learns that Woo has returned to school this semester. Witnessing Shin's remarkable transformation, Woo finds it difficult to believe he is the same person he knew back in their first semester of college. Shin and Woo were once classmates in the Department of Business Administration, often seen as outsiders who stuck together for convenience during their school years, but drifted apart after graduation. Shin never anticipated they would reconnect in such a manner. From Woo's demeanor, we can see his shyness and introversion. Shin asks Woo if he is also taking the playwriting class and if he is interested in writing. Woo stammers in response, explaining that it isn't really like that. He admits he was just curious and decided to take the class on a whim. Tell him as there is no point in hiding it, my Shakespeare. Woo inquires about Shin's reason for taking the class. Shin responds that he is pursuing acting. Surprised, Woo asks incredulously, acting? You? Shin affirms his interest and goes on to explain that he even worked as a staff member at Changchun during his freshman year. Woo expresses surprise upon learning about Shin's interest in acting, which Shin acknowledges, mentioning that he used to be reserved as well. Woo then opens up about his long-standing fascination with theater, despite doubting it's fit for him. He admits to never formally studying it but took the class out of newfound courage. Reflecting on Woo's remarks, Shin recalls how he too once doubted his suitability for acting. Despite these doubts, Shin believes that unless Woo takes proactive steps towards his passion, he risks merely watching it pass him by for the rest of his life. Shin asks Woo if he has tried his hand at writing. Woo responds with a yes and shyly offers to show Shin one of his pieces. Feeling nervous and self-conscious, Woo asks Shin not to laugh at his work. As Shin spends an extended period of time reading the writing, Woo starts to worry. He wonders if Shin liked it or if he thinks it's terrible. Finally, Shin begins to speak, and to Woo's astonishment, he starts making harsh comments. Woo is initially taken aback, finding Shin's behavior odd. However, he quickly realizes that Shin is not actually criticizing his work. Instead, he is skillfully acting out the role of the main character from Woo's story. Woo is amazed at how Shin, with his performance, brings the world he created to life. After finishing his impromptu performance, Shin hands the script back to Woo and tells him that his writing is enjoyable and that he has real talent. The scene transitions to Seon, who is struggling with a section of a script. She reaches out to Seo Ryu for assistance. Several weeks prior, Seo Ryu had shown her a book related to the upcoming fall performance of Oedipus, a production he initially intended to direct. During their conversation, it is revealed that Seo Ryu had specifically asked Seon to take on the directorial role for this performance. He explained that although directing was his original plan, his aspirations have shifted. When Seon inquired if his change of heart was due to Shin, Seo Ryu sighed and admitted that, despite the uncertainty of securing the lead role from Shin, he still wanted to challenge himself and perform on equal terms. Seo Ryu expressed his desire for the production to excel in both acting and direction, which is why he entrusted Seon with the role of the director. Back in the present, Seon is feeling stuck. She knows that Seo Ryu asked her to become the director because he trusts her, and she is determined to produce the best results possible. However, she hasn't found a single script that resonates with her. She contemplates creating a new adaptation of the original work. Despite her reluctance, she decides to call a friend for help. A few days later, at an Oedipus meeting, Seo Ryu and Shin reunite after a long time. They greet each other warmly and chat about the recent Oedipus workshop. Once everyone has arrived, Seon asks them to take their seats. She begins speaking, reminding everyone that she will be directing the fall performance. She announces that the fall performance will be Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. However, she reveals that she has encountered a problem. Although the original script is brilliant, none of the theater adaptations have caught her eye. Therefore, she has decided to hire an adapter to create a new version. The adapter has stipulated that she will only deliver her work after confirming the cast's skills. As a result, the casting will proceed with the original script first, and the adapter will observe the process, as requested. The adapter finally joins the group and introduces herself as Min Joran. A flashback reveals that when Seon approached Min to write a new adaptation of the original script, she mentioned that this time she would be the director, not the assistant director. This revelation surprises Min, who was aware that Seo Ryu was initially supposed to direct the performance. Seon explained that Seo Ryu wished to act in this production instead of directing it. In response, Min set a condition: she would only write the new adaptation if Seo Ryu secured the lead role. Seon, feeling nervous, informed Min that the roles would be decided through a casting process, meaning she couldn't make any guarantees about Seo Ryu getting the lead. Min, intrigued, learned that there is now an actor in the Oedipus troupe capable of competing with Seo Ryu for the lead role. This development led her to decide to attend the casting herself to observe the talent firsthand. Min Joran looks at Shin, observing his style. She feels it's good but still amateurish. Someone please tell his witch that her style is trash herself. She cunningly thinks that Seo Ryu will likely secure the lead role, and even if that doesn't happen, she can phase Shin out at any time. She reflects on the fact that a perfectionist like Seon Yuri reached out to her, implying that the production can only succeed with her script. The casting process finally begins. Unlike the more structured Changchun, the Oedipus troupe operates in an extremely laissez-faire manner. Yet, no one takes this lightly. In the workshop, everyone stayed up late practicing, even without being asked. There's also the "Hey, you come out" system, where anyone can challenge another actor for their role. If the challenger performs well, they can take the role from the original actor. The casting begins for the lead role, with only Seo Ryu and Shin as contenders. The other group members murmur among themselves, believing there's no point in competing with a genius who played the main character for 3 years and an actor praised by the renowned Hansung. The narrative explains that Robert Louis Stevenson's 1886 classic, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, although written over a century ago, continues to captivate audiences with its unconventional exploration of human nature. This timeless story has been retold in various mediums and genres, including movies, plays, and musicals. What's particularly interesting about this original theatrical work is the contrast between Dr. Jekyll, who is clearly good and aristocratic, and Mr. Hyde, who personifies evil. Despite being the same in appearance, they are completely opposite on the inside. In other words, it's all about how one actor juggles playing these two roles, and Seon desperately wants to see the dichotomy banter between them. In the first turn, Seo Ryu plays the role of Jekyll and Shin plays that of Hyde. Act 1 and Scenes 2 starts. Seo Ryu starts delivering his lines. He converses with the assistant director, playing the role of Utterson, Jekyll's dearest friend. The scene depicts a reunion between Jekyll and his closest companion. Shin, however, is taken aback by Seo Ryu's acting. Although he has seen Seo Ryu perform many times in his past life when he was in his 30 seconds, Seo Ryu's current skills are just as impressive. Shin realizes that Seo Ryu was already a great actor by the time he entered college. They move on to Act 2, Scene 3, signaling Shin's turn to perform. This scene marks Hyde's first appearance, where Hyde is discovered savagely beating an innocent old man and is accosted by a passerby, Richard Enfield. Shin embodies the character perfectly, vividly portraying Hyde as not just an evil character, but evil incarnate. Seo Ryu, witnessing Shin's outstanding performance, feels a pang of jealousy because despite it being Shin's first act of the year, he totally ate. In this scenario, the dynamics between Shin and Seo Ryu playing the roles of Jekyll and Hyde have highlighted stark contrasts in their acting styles. Seo Ryu's portrayal of Jekyll was notably more aristocratic, whereas Shin's performance seemed ordinary. Conversely, Shin's portrayal of Hyde was strikingly intense as compared to Seo Ryu's Hyde, which looks very ordinary and bland, lacking the evil aura. Seon, perplexed and slightly frustrated by the inconsistency in the performances, decides to convene a brief meeting with the production team to address the issue. The assistant director suggests selecting Seo Ryu for the roles of Jekyll and Hyde. Seon, contemplating the decision, realizes that opting for Shin could present challenges, even though it seems like a waste to miss out on Shin's exceptional portrayal of Hyde. Despite both actors delivering performances that surpass typical college-level acting, a more detailed evaluation of their skills reveals a clearer picture. If their portrayals were quantified, Seo Ryu would score a 7 for Jekyll and a 3 for Hyde. In contrast, Shin would receive a 2 for Jekyll but an impressive 8 for Hyde. While their total scores are equal, the disparity in Shin's performance between the two roles is significant. This makes Seo Ryu the more balanced choice. Seon concludes that ensuring consistent quality across both characters is crucial, and therefore, choosing Seo Ryu is the right decision. However, the assistant director objects, arguing that Shin's portrayal of Hyde is too exceptional to discard. The discussion intensifies, with various viewpoints considered. Eventually, the directors emerge from the meeting room and announce that the roles of Jekyll and Hyde have been assigned to Seo Ryu. This decision leaves both Shin and Seo Ryu surprised. Then, Seon announces the commencement of the casting for the next role, inviting all the contenders to come to the stage. However, Shin raises his hand and, with an apologetic tone, informs Seon that he will not be auditioning for any of the subsequent roles. This statement confuses Seon, prompting her to ask if Shin is implying that he won't participate in the Oedipus performance unless he is given the main role. Shin quickly clarifies that this is not the case. Instead, he explains that he would like to take the role of Passerby One, the man who gets beaten up by Hyde, rather than pursuing other roles. This unexpected decision leaves everyone surprised, as they did not anticipate Shin wanting such a minor part. Shin reflects on why he believes he failed in his recent performance. He attributes it to the script brought by Seon, a classic piece from an era that valued theatricality and dialogue delivery. However, 15 years later, in the time of his previous life, Shin lived in a world where such hyperbolic scripts are often rewritten to be more relatable. As an actor who prioritizes realistic performances, he finds it challenging to immerse himself in lines filled with formality, especially Jekyll's dialogue, which he feels is overly pervasive. Despite these challenges, Shin remains optimistic that with more time, he can overcome these hurdles. Normally, he would give his best effort in any role, but this play leaves little room for strong characterization or significance outside of the main role. To convince his parents, who are unfamiliar with theater, of his acting prowess, Shin realizes he must secure the lead role this time. Therefore, Shin makes a decisive announcement. He will continue to vie for the role of Jekyll, Hyde until he succeeds, emphasizing his determination to prove himself in this pivotal role. Seo Ryu grins and contemplates whether Shin is burning his bridges by committing fully to the role of Jekyll, Hyde. However, he acknowledges that dedicating himself entirely to this main role is the only way for Shin to achieve his goal. Seo Ryu knows that he was chosen for having the smallest gap between his Jekyll and Hyde performances, so he resolves to sharpen his acting skills and promises to deliver a Hyde portrayal that matches Shin's convincing depiction. The Oedipus genius is determined not to relinquish the lead role without proving his worth. Convinced that whatever happens, Seo Ryu will retain the lead role, Min happily tells Seon that she agrees to do the adaptation. In the writing class the next day, the professor announces something astonishing that grabs everyone's attention. There's a student who has written and presented an impressive total of 7 scripts in just 3 weeks. This revelation piques the curiosity of the students, who wonder if this prolific individual aspires to be a writer. If I were in their class, I would be thinking, who is this crazy man, writing scripts as if his pen is on fire. The professor then reveals the most intriguing aspect of this student's work. Despite initially displaying signs of amateurism in dialogue and thematic composition, each subsequent script showed remarkable improvement in quality. At first, the professor assumed the student was inexperienced, noting flaws in their dialogue and thematic coherence. However, with each subsequent submission, the rapid improvement in the student's writing skills became increasingly apparent. The professor was astonished by this transformation and revealed that the student in question was Wu from the Department of Business Administration. Wu had swiftly evolved into a proficient writer within a short span of time. Expressing gratitude for encountering such passion and talent, the professor reminisced about their own early days in theater. Addressing Wu directly, the professor encouraged serious consideration of a career in writing, highlighting the evident talent and dedication that had blossomed so remarkably. In the subsequent scene, the members of the Oedipus troupe engage in rigorous physical training before their main practice session. They focus on honing their body balance, engaging in intense exercises that test their muscle control and spatial awareness. This training requires constant coordination with fellow actors, synchronizing their positions and movements. The last remaining shimmers of my will to become an actor also disappeared after hearing this. Anyways, after the demanding workout, Shin reflects on the intensity of the session, speculating that perhaps the advanced level of difficulty is due to all the members being majors in their field. Shin considers that perhaps because his fellow actors are individuals who chose the path of acting from a young age, they likely possess a deeper understanding of the body and its mechanics compared to many other members of theater companies. However, Shin is taken aback when a fellow member compliments him, telling him that he actually did good as a first-timer. Curious, Shin asks her if she really means it. She explains that his center did not wobble and his angles were perfectly sharp. What the hell is she talking about? What angle? What sharp? Does she mean ... Let's leave it. Shin himself realizes that indeed, his body feels lighter now. In his previous life, he often felt cumbersome during practice and performances with other actors. It was as if he were struggling against double or triple the normal gravity. Back then, he attributed this feeling to a lack of stamina, driving himself relentlessly to train harder. Now, realizing it was his presence that made the difference, Shin feels that all the hard work he put in before seemed somewhat meaningless in comparison. Suddenly, the assistant director comes in, announcing that the new adaptation of the script has arrived. Everyone grabs a copy. Shin starts reading it. After reading the script, Shin feels relieved because, unlike the last time, the lines are way more natural now and not overly theatrical. Finally, no more 1880s feeble gentleman riz. Then, the practice session commences with scenes involving Jekyll and Utterson, while Shin, assigned the role of passerby one which has no practice today, sits in a corner diligently rehearsing the main character's script instead. This routine continues for 1 or 2 weeks until Shin approaches the director, Seon, and expresses his desire to audition again for the role of Jekyll Hyde. Everyone is astonished at how quickly Shin has prepared the revised role. Seoryu, in particular, wonders if Shin has already completed transforming into the new Jekyll. Seon reminds Shin that if his performance quality matches that of the current actor, the role will remain with the established cast member. Shin agrees to the terms. Seon then asks if there's a specific scene he wishes to perform. Shin replies that any scene will suffice. So, Seon suggests the conference podium scene where Jekyll presents his academic arguments. Here, Jekyll must exude aristocratic charm while conveying scholarly fascination with new theories. She wonders whether Shin can embody this portrayal. After that, Shin begins his performance, starting with deliberate dialogue delivery that gradually unfolds the character of Henry Jekyll. To Seon's surprise, she begins to realize that Shin's interpretation of Jekyll differs significantly from her initial conception. The prototype of Henry Jekyll she envisioned was an incorruptible gentleman, almost unrealistically noble and pure, akin to Seoryu's demonstration of brightness and warmth that captivates those around him without any flaws. However, Shin's Jekyll portrays more of a scholarly figure with a touch of misophobia, showcasing a different layer of complexity. Jekyll with his bright and warm personality caught people's attention by contrasting with Hyde. But she found it a bit unconvincing why someone who seemed to have it all would develop such a drug and drink it himself. However, Jekyll played by Shin is a man with a moral imperfection who strives for perfection. It is truly light, not a light that feels bright but a light that feels clean. if Jekyll had been suppressing his impulses towards dirty and evil things in order to keep himself clean. Above all, it matches the Hyde played by Shin. The contrast between the black, evil, embodied Hyde and the pristine, clean Jekyll becomes more clear with Shin's profound acting. Seon tells Shin that she really enjoyed his performance and will tell him the results after discussing it with the production team. However, Shin stops her and tells her that he would also like her to see his performance of Hyde again. Seon finds herself perplexed by Shin's request to audition for the role of Hyde again, which she believed he had already portrayed quite effectively. Nonetheless, she grants his request and assigns him the scene of Hyde's monologue following Sir Danvers' death. As Shin immerses himself in the role of Hyde, everyone present is both surprised and captivated simultaneously. The malevolence and dark aura emanating from Shin during Danvers' demise resonate deeply with them all. He depicts pure ecstasy in the face of tragedy and pain, embodying Hyde's sinister essence with chilling authenticity. Hyde thinks that he is Joker. Seon realizes that Shin's portrayal of Hyde now contrasts sharply with his previous interpretation, yet they share the same underlying essence. Where Jekyll vehemently avoids impurity, cruelty, and pleasure, Hyde obsessively craves these elements, revealing a deeper, more nuanced depiction of evil than before. She senses that the current portrayals of Hyde and Jekyll by Shin are not just compatible but perfect complements. Following the performance, Seon is thoroughly impressed, but she poses one question to Shin. She asks him why this rendition of Hyde, despite Shin's previous impressive depiction of a twisted, shrunken, inhuman figure, feels larger than before. Shin explains that it's simply because that was scene 1 and this is scene 2. Seon does get his point. Shin explains that in the original version of the play, Dr. Jekyll's evil side was much smaller than his good side. So, the early Hyde was grotesquely short and stooped. However, as the influence of the evil self grows, the body that was initially distorted gradually expands and eventually overwhelms Jekyll. That's what he wanted to express symbolically. After witnessing Shin's outstanding performance, Seo Ryu becomes anxious. He realizes that Shin's acting prowess cannot be attributed solely to innate talent. Shin is both a genius and an incredibly diligent worker. Subsequently, the directors decide to cast Shin in the lead role, assigning him to the Jekyll, Hyde character, a position Seo Ryu had intensely prepared for. As a result, Seo Ryu starts to perspire, feeling the weight of losing the coveted role he worked so hard to secure. I tried so hard and got so far, but in the end, it doesn't even matter. Seo Ryu must be low-key vibing to this banger in his head. Seon then asks Seo Ryu if he, now the rejected actor, would be interested in auditioning for another part. The term rejected actor stings Seo Ryu, who finds it a harsh and cruel label. In response, and mirroring Shin's previous actions, Seo Ryu requests the role of Passerby 1, a minor part that Shin had played before. However, despite his outward composure, Seo Ryu harbors a deep and fervent desire to reclaim the lead role of Jekyll, Hyde, for himself. Later on, Seon meets with Min and informs her that the lead actor has been changed from Seo Ryu to Shin. Min is displeased by this news and expresses her opposition. Seon attempts to clarify, explaining that Min might be misunderstanding the situation, as the casting decisions are entirely at the discretion of the director. However, Min is not convinced by this explanation. She elaborates that in a drama, the writer often participates in casting decisions, and in films, writers can sometimes influence the casting depending on the circumstances. However, in theater, casting is unequivocally the director's prerogative. Min reminds Seon that she had made only one request, to cast Seo Ryu in the lead role, and feels disappointed that Seon was unable to fulfill this request. Seon tries to make Min understand that she hasn't seen the character Shin has prepared. However, Min adamantly refuses to agree. She declares that even if a dog's acting were better, she would still choose Seo Ryu, insisting that she will only consider potential actors for the lead roles in her work. I want to rip off this witch's script in front of her very eyes and give them my own script instead. Never mind. Min bluntly states that Shin or whatever his name is might become a promising actor in the future, but not at this moment. Seon finally becomes irritated and says that she doesn't care anymore. However, Min threatens her, saying that she can still withdraw the script even though it's already in circulation. Those words strike a nerve with Seon. She becomes so angry that, internally, she wishes she could tell Min to take her script and leave. However, she manages to maintain her composure. She asks for some time and suggests that they will have a meeting later to discuss the matter. After that, Seon calls an emergency meeting with Shin and Seo Ryu. She asks them what they should do. Irritated, Seo Ryu bluntly tells her that the answer is obvious, they should dismiss Min. However, Seon is aware that the existing scripts are poor, and finding another adapter would take time and burden the actors with memorizing new lines. Despite this, Seo Ryu and Shin assure her that they are fine with the initial script and can prepare for it. Yet, Seon knows that this doesn't solve the problem of finding a suitable adaptation writer. She tells them that if things don't work out, she will at least try to apologize to Min. At that moment, Seo Ryu steps forward and insists that they should find another adapter from now on, emphasizing that a director must not arbitrarily swallow their pride. Seon becomes emotional, explaining that she is willing to swallow her pride if it means producing a good performance. She reminds them that as actors, they will face a lot of external pressure in their careers, and there will be many times when they will have to swallow their pride. However, Seo Ryu insists that she should at least compromise for something worth the sacrifice, arguing that Min's arrogance, given she hasn't yet created any official work, is not something worthy of submitting to. They realize that it would be impossible to complete a script from scratch in such a short time, so they decide to modify the version used during casting. They agree that whatever gaps remain, they will cover up with their acting and improvisation. At that moment, Shin remembers Woo. He suggests to Seon and Seo Ryu that he has a friend who writes screenplays and asks if he should reach out to him for a favor. Seon and Seo Ryu agree, so Shin calls Woo to ask if he can write the novel adaptation. Woo responds that while he has done this type of work before, he is curious why Shin is reaching out to him so suddenly. Shin then explains that the project in question is an adaptation of a script for the Oedipus Fall performance. Recognizing the importance of this opportunity, Woo becomes flustered. Shin further elaborates that they are currently facing issues with their existing writer and are in search of a replacement. He clarifies that although he cannot guarantee that Woo's adaptation will be chosen, he thought of Woo because he believed he might be interested in the project. Woo ponders for a moment, considering the prospect that the actors themselves want to perform using his script, recognizing it as a wonderful opportunity. He tells Shin that he writes every day without necessarily expecting his work to make it to the stage. Therefore, even if his script isn't selected, he asks for feedback on where he might be lacking. With that, he agrees to write the adaptation. Relieved and happy, Shin then asks how long it will take. Woo estimates that he can complete it in 2–3 days. To everyone's surprise, just after 2 days, Woo presents them with the completed adaptation of the script. Woo silently observes Seon, Seo Ryu, and Shin, marveling at their beauty and the grace with which they maintain themselves. As actors, they look flawless, exuding an intense presence. Woo feels like the odd one out, overwhelmed by their aura as well as their intense inspection of his script, a sensation far more intense than the anxiety he felt when receiving his SAT scores. Woo observes Seon, Seo Ryu, and Shin's expressions and feels confirmed in his suspicion that his script isn't very good. However, he is surprised to learn that they actually like his script. Seon tells him that while she notices a lot of inexperience in the dialogue and scene transitions, she still finds it refreshing. She further comments that although it differs significantly from Min's version, she appreciates the novelty of the scene. Seon points to a part of the script where Hyde transforms into Jekyll and praises Woo, saying that this particular section is exceptionally well written. Shin is also pleased that the director appreciates the script. When adapting a work of fiction for the stage, only select scenes from the entire novel are highlighted and used. Therefore, the situations and dialogues of each scene are often completely recreated by the adapter, borrowing only the atmosphere of the original, and the results vary depending on the adapter. While Woo's script lacks detail, the novelty, as Seon mentioned, is what makes it stand out. Shin gives feedback to Woo, saying that the script is overall great but that the actors will need to rework the dialogue and the director will need to touch up the scenes. Woo asks if he can watch them working on it, explaining that it will help him learn. Seon extends even more help, asking Woo if he would like to join the practice sessions. Seon suggests that Woo register as a guest member of Oedipus and observe the readings as part of the semi-directing team. Woo is thrilled by the invitation and enthusiastically agrees, saying he will attend the practice room every day. With that, they are all determined to work together to refine the script. The scene shifts to Shin walking down a street where he notices the poster he modeled for with Seol when he visited Minhee's store for the modeling gig. He overhears people talking about the poster, particularly remarking on how otherworldly the female model looks and how handsome the male model with his back facing the camera is. Realizing they are talking about him, Shin covers his face and starts moving quickly to avoid being recognized. It turns out that Anzia's brand became a huge success because she distributed eye-catching posters of her clothes on college campuses without any explanation about the brand or the clothes. Shin feels a bit embarrassed that his back has become famous, but he is also relieved that he took the picture without showing his face, which helps him avoid unwanted attention. Suddenly, Shin notices a large crowd gathered in front of the school gate. To his surprise, he sees Seol among them, with people stopping to admire her beauty. Let me quickly add her to the hall of S-tier chicks. Yep, done. Shin quickly rushes over, takes off his cap, and places it on Seol to help her avoid further attention. Happy to see her after so long, he asks her to keep the cap on to avoid more recognition. They leave the scene together and find a quiet staircase to sit on and enjoy some cold drinks. Shin tells Seol that he heard from Minhee that she is getting a lot of work because of the photo shoot they did together. However, Seol doesn't feel as happy about it. She confides in Shin that although she has a lot of work, she isn't as immersed as she was during their previous shoot. This causes her to struggle each time she works. She explains that while Shin helped her calm down and have a good shoot back then, she has been navigating on her own since, reverting to her usual timid self. Consequently, she sometimes gets cancelled. Seol tells Shin that she tried drinking coke and visualizing white dots in her mind like she did before, but it hasn't worked anymore. Shin listens to her attentively, and after some thought, he asks if she has ever been to a play rehearsal. He then takes her to the Oedipus play rehearsal. Everyone is surprised to see this beautiful angel standing beside Shin. Some speculate whether she might be his younger sister, while others wonder if she could be his mentor. The MC sighs and asks everyone to calm down, clarifying that neither is the case. He asks the director if it would be okay for Seol to observe the practice. Seon, confused, asks Shin who she is. Shin explains that she is an aspiring actor but currently feels a bit lost. In times like this, he believes that watching others practice can help one relax, which is why he brought her here. Seon understands and warmly allows Seol to observe the practice. She offers Seol a comfortable seat and tells her that if she needs to leave in the middle, she can do so quietly to avoid disturbing the practice. Seol takes a seat and observes everyone, marveling at their skills and dedication. She wonders if they practice like this every day. Among all the talented individuals, she notices that Shin stands out the most. However, when the rehearsal begins, she is taken aback to see Shin playing the character of Hyde with malice and evil, a stark contrast to his usual demeanor. She begins to wonder if he is the same person who was so kind to her. As the other actors also transform into their characters, Seol realizes how different they seem from their everyday selves when they act. Watching everyone work so hard, she realizes that her resolve so far was enough, and with newfound motivation, she exits the hall quietly. After the main practice session ends, something shocking happens. Seo Ryu approaches the director and expresses his desire to audition again for the role of Jekyll Hyde. Upon taking the stage, Seo Ryu reflects that it was only after watching Shin's acting 2 weeks ago that he truly understood his characters. He realized that Jekyll and Hyde are not just separate individuals but archetypes stemming from the same origin and diverging in opposite directions. After intense contemplation, he developed a Jekyll character who is bright and pure like an angel, and a Hyde character who embodies a bright and pure evil like a devil. He begins his performance as Hyde, delivering the same scene of Sir Danvers' death that Shin previously performed. To Shin's surprise, Seo Ryu's portrayal of Hyde is not that of corrupting evil but rather an evil that carries the innocence of a child. Shin realizes that while this depiction of Hyde may not fit his interpretation of Jekyll, it perfectly complements Seo Ryu's conception of Jekyll. When the scene ends, Shin feels impressed by Seo Ryu's performance this time, understanding the concern, choice, and practice embedded in each movement that Seo Ryu performed. Seo Ryu's performance creates a dilemma for the directors, as both Shin and Seo Ryu offer distinct advantages in their portrayals of Jekyll and Hyde. Shin's rendition portrays a tumultuous yet relatable noble with a fractured psyche, drawing the audience into his internal conflict. On the other hand, Seo Ryu embodies a character that humanizes both angels and devils, presenting a twist where pure evil is fascinatingly portrayed as innocent rather than simply malevolent. During the discussion, the assistant director seeks Seon's guidance on what to do next. Seon considers the situation carefully and suggests that if they cannot determine superiority or inferiority between the two actors, then as per the rules, they should typically lean towards the already established performer. However, the assistant director argues that Seo Ryu's recent performance surpasses anything he has delivered in the past 3 years. As the directors struggle to reach a decision, Woo raises his hand and proposes a solution: double casting. He suggests that instead of choosing one actor over the other, they can cast both Shin and Seo Ryu in the roles of Jekyll and Hyde respectively. The directors find this suggestion appealing, and after further deliberation, they announce that the production will proceed with double casting. Seon explains that this decision acknowledges the excellence of both actors' performances and ensures that each brings their unique interpretation to the characters, enriching the overall production. A member raises her hand and asks how are the roles divided. Seon tells that their new writer gave a good opinion about that, asking Woo to come and explain it to the members. Woo comes forth and explains that there are a total of 4 performances: Thursday evening, Friday evening, Saturday noon, and evening. So, in his opinion, it would be fun if Seo Ryu played both Jekyll and Hyde once and Shin also played both once. And on Saturday, the two of them perform Jekyll and Hyde separately. However, Seo Ryu poses a question asking what about the part where Hyde transforms into Jekyll in front of Dr. Lanyon at Saturday's performance. He explains that the transformation part is the climax of the play. So, Woo suggests that they're gonna use a screen for that. He explains that if they cover it up with a white cloth and hit the light from the back, the silhouette will come to life. The actor originally playing Hyde stays up to the silhouette change, and when he reappears from behind the screen, it's a completely different face playing Jekyll. However, another member shows concern, saying that if the tone of Jekyll and Hyde does not match, the audience will feel out of place. Wall admits it, feeling anxious that it's tricky as expected. However, Shin and Seo Ryu confidently say that they can do it. On a random Oedipus's main performance day, shockingly, in the morning, Min comes to the practice hall and bashes the door open. She accuses Seon that she's being too harsh on her, and had she known that there is a double casting, she wouldn't have boycotted it and would have given her script. Min tells Seon that since she had a lot of trouble writing and revising an immature first draft, she can use hers now. However, Seon swiftly turns her down, asking her to go back. She explains that they have already changed the script, memorized it, and rehearsed it also. But Min feigns sadness, telling that she devoted all her time to writing the script that she requested. So, if Seon will do this, her effort will go wasted. Yet, Seon boldly states that Min is the one who walked away, so right now there is no point in spouting nonsense. Min tries to persuade everyone by saying that what if Oedipus' main performance has a lousy script and offers her script saying that this one is more novel and better than theirs. Is she a writer or a salesman? It's hard to tell at this point. Anyways, despite everything, Seon does not agree to her demands. Yet, Min states that even though she is a guest, she is also listed as an Oedipus member. So, as a director, Seon has to give a fair evaluation, especially considering that Oedipus focuses on skill. Just then, Shin enters the conversation. He asks Min what would be her opinion if a recognizable actor confirms that Woo's script is better. Min flinches for a moment and then asks who this actor is. Shin reveals that it's Mrs. Lee, the actress who conducted the workshop on listening, and suggests that they get both the scripts evaluated by her while maintaining anonymity. Everyone gets surprised to see that Shin has Mrs. Lee's number. Min agrees to get Mrs. Lee's evaluation of the scripts. They send both the scripts via email to her. After 1 hour, they receive a response. Seon opens it up and reads it out for everyone. It read that Mrs. Lee really enjoyed the scripts. In her email, Mrs. Lee stated that in script A, that is Woo's script, seeing as there are parts where none of the lines stick and parts where they stand out better, it looks like they have been rewriting a script written by a beginner for a while. On the other hand, she agreed that script B, Min's script, was written by someone who had some experience with writing. She said that it's a script that's worthy of being performed immediately. However, yet, she wrote that Mrs. Lee likes the script better. Mrs. Lee acknowledges that while the dialogues in script are rough, the portrayal of Jekyll and Hyde's inner thoughts is excellent. She notes that despite the writer's lack of experience, there is a strong intuition reflected in the script. Mrs. Lee mentions that she shared the script with a writer on her team, who also expressed liking it. So, we get a clear winner of this battle. Yet, Min still struggles to convince everyone, telling that unlike Woo's script, her dialogues aren't rough. Eventually, irritated by her pestering, the directors gave her the title of sub-writer of the performance. However, on their way back home, Woo laments to Shin about Min becoming the sub-writer. Shin tries to convey to Woo that it is difficult for them to ignore the situation, given that she has written an entire script for their Oedipus adaptation, and also, it is tough to rehearse while still revising the script. Shin reassures Woo not to worry too much because they had agreed to remove Min if she became too disruptive, and Min had accepted those terms. Despite this reassurance, Woo admits he is still uneasy and even frightened of Min. In response, Shin places a hand on Woo's shoulder and brings up the novel Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which Woo read numerous times while adapting it. Shin suggests that they practice the character of hide together. When Woo asks why, Shin explains that sometimes in life, they all need to channel a bit of hide, especially when dealing with people who might otherwise take them for granted. Shin explains to Woo that there will be times when he is working with Min, and she will start complaining or try to divert the conversation. During those moments, Woo just needs to say one specific thing. Curious, Woo asks what it is. Shin leans in and whispers the answer in his ear. Woo is taken aback by what he hears and asks Shin how he could possibly say such a thing. However, Shin reassures him that once he does, he and Min will get along much better. He then takes Woo for the practice. The following day, Woo and Min are seen sitting together while the rest of the group is busy rehearsing for their upcoming performance. Min turns to Woo and suggests that she could simply work on the script by corresponding through email, expressing that it seems unnecessary for her to be physically present in the practice room. Shin, observing their interaction, silently prompts Woo with a look, reminding him of the lesson he imparted the previous day. Initially feeling a surge of nervousness, Woo quickly composes himself and, following Shin's advice, adopts a stern demeanor. He then asks Min in a cold tone whether she is implying that she wishes to leave. Min is taken aback by Woo's unexpectedly severe response, and the rest of the group is equally astonished by his sudden assertiveness. Woo then adds that if Min wants to leave, she can get out. His cold demeanor frightens Min, and flustered, she begins to explain that she didn't mean it like that. Woo recalls Shin's next lesson. Even if Min shows weakness and apologizes, he should not accept it and instead steer the conversation back to work. Following Shin's advice, Woo does just that. He calmly talks about work, assigns Min some tasks, and then walks away, leaving Min and the rest of the group stunned by his sudden assertiveness. After Woo leaves, Min contemplates that his behavior was unexpected. He seemed weak, so she thought she could play with him however she wanted. She thinks that if it goes on like this, the moment she starts ranting, she gets dismissed. After that, the practice begins again and the director guides everyone on their positioning and other technicalities. Shin still has not solved the problem of different character tones when playing Jekyll, Hyde separately with Seo Ryu for the Saturday night performance. As they match their habits and facial expressions, they look more like the same person than before. But there is still a sense of incongruity. He wonders what he should do about this. Shin, seeking a solution, turns to Miho for help. After hearing the whole story, Miho laughs and downplays the issue, telling Shin he's overreacting to something trivial, and calling him foolish. Perplexed, Shin asks for clarification. Before offering any advice, Miho mischievously asks what's in it for him, hinting at another transaction. However, Miho quickly reassures Shin that the matter is so minor it doesn't even warrant a trade. With Shin bowing and pleading for guidance, Miho places his hand on Shin's head and advises him to simply get it right. Miho elaborates that trying to match his character without changing it is tough. Instead, Shin should just align his performance with Seo Ryu's. Shin finally understands, realizing that the first performance, where he plays both roles himself, and the later performances, shared with Seo Ryu, are distinct. This means he doesn't have to maintain the same character throughout. Recognizing the need for a new approach, Shin understands he must draft a new script and study Seo Ryu's acting to adjust his performance accordingly. Mr. Hansung tells the group that he attended tonight because it was the opening night of the performance. However, he felt disappointed upon learning about the double casting, as it meant he couldn't choose a favorite actor. He remarks that he will have to return on Saturday to watch it again. Conversely, Professor Yeeple expresses his commitment to watching all 4 performances. Hey, who's gonna take the lectures then? Meanwhile, Shin's parents arrive to witness the fall performance. As they enter the hall, they question whether they are in the right place, as it's their first time coming to witness a theater performance. Shin's mother surveys the grand size of the venue and concludes that this club must be quite renowned. Once everyone is seated, the lights dim, signaling that the eagerly anticipated fall performance is about to commence. The performance begins with Shin portraying the role of Dr. Jekyll. As Dr. Jekyll, he warmly greets the audience, expressing his gratitude for their attendance at his academy presentation. The play then unfolds with Dr. Jekyll addressing the audience, discussing the age-old debate within religion and philosophy regarding whether humans are fundamentally good or evil. He explains that after extensive research, he has come to the conclusion that the human body is an amalgamation of both qualities, which are inherently inseparable. A scholar inquires about the implications if these qualities were to be separated. Dr. Jekyll presents his hypothesis, suggesting that it might be feasible to isolate those who are purely good from those who are purely evil. He then poses a rhetorical question about the yin and yang, asking whether, if separated, they would still share memories. He confidently answers his own question, affirming that indeed they would. He elaborates that it is highly likely that these two separate types would have extremely opposite tendencies in their value judgments and reactions to shared memories. Dr. Jekyll reveals that he is working on a formula and a corresponding drug to separate these two qualities. He theorizes that if human nature could be divided into distinct entities, individuals would no longer have to contend with their darker instincts. As the play progresses, after Dr. Jekyll's presentation, the character Richard meets with the lawyer Utterson. Richard informs Utterson about rumors that a dreadful monster has been haunting the back streets of London. However, Utterson is skeptical, dismissing the rumors as unreliable. However, Richard insists that he has personally seen the monster and describes it as a truly evil individual. When Shin transitions to the terrifying role of Hyde, his performance is so convincing that it shocks his mother. She is taken aback, questioning if this intense character is really her son, the same child who hasn't had a presence since he was a kid. His mother recalls that when he was in the lower grades of elementary school, he would cry and throw tantrums whenever he didn't get attention. But at some point, he stopped wanting to draw attention to himself in front of others, almost as if he was giving up something he can't have. Watching his realistic portrayal of a criminal like Hyde, she wonders where her gentle child learned to make such convincing facial expressions. She is astonished to see how he captivates the audience, siphoning their attention like a black hole. Anyways, the performance continues. We see Richard presenting a promissory note to Dr. Jekyll, and informing him that he heard from Richard that a monster named Hyde had handed over this promissory note, bearing Jekyll's signature, to pay for the old man's medical treatment. Jekyll becomes curious to know that. Lawyer Utterson informs him that he was concerned about his friend's involvement with such a scoundrel, which is why he came to inform him. Now that's a real bro, Jekyll should give him a kiss as a homie. Jekyll thanks him for the information. However, as soon as Utterson leaves, Dr. Jekyll begins to sweat, realizing that the first pleasure he sought in his alter ego was a type of undignified behavior he had always avoided. For once, he had wanted to go for a walk and feel the wind on his face, without buttoning his shirt all the way up. He had thought his darkness was limited to that. But now, knowing that there was a horrible monster inside himself, one that took pleasure in beating people and feeling alive in a dirty whore's bed, makes him feel horrible. WH what did just bro say? Grabbing his head, feeling his throat tighten, Dr. Jekyll suddenly stands from his chair, his tie loosening from the suffocation he feels. His gaze falls on the drug he created, temptation pulling at him. But he resists, stopping himself from drinking it. Despite his efforts, he succumbs and consumes the potion. Instantly, he transforms into Hyde, a stark contrast to his dignified self, embodying a darker and more sinister persona. Wait, so does that mean that Hyde and Dr. Jekyll are the same person? Moreover, will Shin be able to deliver a better performance than Seo Ryu? Stay tuned to find out in the next episode.